Hey there, thanks for stopping by. We're going to continue the series of going through all the parts in the game in their current state for alpha. And today we're going to be talking about the Epic Nizari Parts. Hope you enjoy, and let's jump into it. So we're going to quickly touch on the parts for the Epic Nizari Parts, and then we'll go into the hall, check out the model of the Incarnate, and then we'll get into some gameplay. So for the parts, the mind part is called Bane, the body part is called Shadestep, and the soul part is called Iajutsu. And let's go to the hall and check out this Incarnate. So we're going to be looking for the Nizari icon. The Nizari icon looks like this. We're looking for the epic parts, and we're looking for all Nizari epic parts. So let's see if we can go ahead and find it. Here we go. So here's the Nizari icon, the epic border that's purple, and then the purple buttons here showing that they're all Nizari parts. And we have a death affinity Incarnate. And we get that death affinity by having two or more parts being of the same affinity type. So the mind part is death, the body part is death, and the soul part is death. So again, like I always say, simple math, those three parts greater than two. So we definitely have an Incarnate with the death affinity. And just taking a quick look at the model here. Oh, that's interesting. That's a nice little bug. There we go. So that was weird. It was clicking around and wasn't able to select it, but there we go. So there's the model for the Epic Nizari. I just get a little close up here. I really love just the weapon styles, the graphic styles, and the shading. And we know that they're updating this background for Nizari as well. So we already have updates for the Judge and the Titan, but we'll see one for the Nizari at some point too. All right, let's jump into the gameplay. All right, so just jumping into the gameplay, we're going to bring an ally with us because we do have a part that does affect our allies and we want to see that working. So let's go ahead and jump into the battle. We've got our Epic Nizari parts going on here. So jumping right into the abilities, we're going to use the body part first, and that's called Shadestep. So let's read it. Allies in your presence gain 50% initiative and surge for 2 turns. And surge is a 25% speed increase plus and +1 to your movement stat. The second part of this is teleport behind an enemy. So 2 parts to this. We need to make sure that we understand both parts. The first being strictly based on your presence, and your presence is going to be a range of 3. So we want to make sure that any allies that we want to hit with this buff are within 3 spaces of my Incarnate. The other piece of this is that we want to teleport behind an enemy, and that teleport is based off of the move stat, I believe. So we're able to see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces there that we're going to be able to teleport to. So they have to be within that. So let's go ahead and use it. What we want to do though is make sure again that this enemy is in that move range, and we also have this ally Incarnate in range of that buff. So we're going to go ahead and move here. And we move there because there's 1, 2, 3 spaces there for the buff to happen. And there's my 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So that enemy Incarnate is within range for that teleport. So let's go ahead and use it. There we go. So you saw that we were able to buff our ally Incarnate because they were within that space of 3 for the presence, and we were able to teleport behind the enemy based on our move stat there. And we do see that our Incarnate got the surge buff, and our ally Incarnate got the surge buff as well. So that's working great. All right, so we're ready to get into the second skill that we're going to test, and that's called Bane. It's the mind part. So let's go ahead and read it. Attack enemies in your presence. They gain bleed, root, and burn for 3 turns. So the bleed is it's a debuff that reduces attack. Let me just make sure we got this right. It reduces attack by 50%, And then when the Incarnate moves, it actually takes 5% damage. So that movement is per space. So if they were to move 4 spaces, they would actually end up taking 4 ticks of that bleed damage, or 20% of their HP would be taken from that bleed debuff. Because this also has a root on it, and root on it means that the Incarnate cannot move any spaces, so it's just bound to that space itself. That Incarnate's not going to be able to move, so you actually won't be able to get the multiple ticks from that bleed. But the burn debuff, though, is also applied, and that's stackable up to 10 times, and that is a 5% damage at the start of the enemy Incarnate's turn. Let's also remember that it's based on your presence. In this case, the presence of this Incarnate is 3. You can see that we are highlighting 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 spaces away, so that's definitely working. And it's specifically says attack enemies in your presence, so it's going to be an AoE ability that will hit multiple enemy Incarnates. So let's go ahead and use it. There we go. So we do have a root, minus 50% defense, and immobilized. I did forget about that 50% decreased defense on there, but that definitely is part of the root debuff. Burn, 5% damage per burn you have at the start of your turn. Again, stackable up to 10. In the bleed, minus 50% attack. Take damage when you move or attack. So if this Incarnate does attack me, it will bleed. If it were able to move, it would take that 5% tick every space it moved. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, so the last skill we're going to talk about is Iajutsu. And let's read it. Attack enemies in line 4 and teleport to the next space. Enemies hit by this bleed for 1 turn. So they'll gain a bleed debuff for 1 turn. And I just want to make sure that, yeah, there we go. So in the card text, the line distance is based on your move stat. So here's my movement stat, and it's got 4. So it is showing 4. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces highlighted, so that's working well. So what's going to happen here is I will be able to attack any enemies in this line, which this enemy Incarnate is, and then I will teleport to this next space here. One thing I'm curious about is whether or not this bleed gets overridden by the 1-turn bleed, or if it stays at the 2-turn bleed, or if it's additive. So we'll go ahead and check that out afterwards. Let's go ahead and use it now. There we go. Unfortunately, we couldn't test because it did kill the enemy Incarnate, but it is on the soul ability. So we'll go ahead and make sure that it did or will apply that debuff on the next turn. All right, so we're going to use Iajutsu again, just to make sure that the debuff does apply to the enemy Incarnate. What we also want to see is a tick of that bleed on the next turn based on the attack of the enemy Incarnate. So let's go ahead and use it real quick and see what happens. So there we go. There's the bleed that is applied based on Iajutsu's skill. And it does have the minus 50% attack and damage when you attack or move. So let's go ahead and end the turn, and hopefully we see some movement or attack from this enemy Incarnate, and we get to see the bleed actually tick. Yep. So that was perfect. What we ended up seeing was that this enemy Incarnate was on the space, turned around, moved 1 space, got 1 tick of that bleed, and then on the attack, it actually ticked that bleed again. That was that 119 number. So it's working perfectly. We definitely see that that's working. It's another great debuff to have. It's another kind of interesting way of crowd control, because it forces the enemy to determine, all right, is it really value added if I move and take 5 to 20 to 25% damage, or do I just stay in place and skip my turn? Or, just forces them to think about their movements and attacks because they have this bleed debuff on. All right, so another quick video going through all of the Epic Nizari skills or parts and their abilities. We saw that the Nizari does have bleed as a couple primary debuffs that it has. Good movement, because of the teleportation that it brings. It's a pretty good damage dealer. Definitely, it's a little squishy for sure, so it's definitely going to be more of your damage dealing Incarnate. Definitely good mobility, like I said, from the teleport. Let me know in the comments below which one of these is your favorite and which one do you think is going to be the most powerful. If you liked this video and you found it informative, definitely toss a like. It helps me out a lot. If you like the content in general and want to see more, feel free to subscribe. It'll be super helpful. Again, I appreciate all the support that I've been given so far. Still very early in this whole YouTube channel career. Not really a career, but more of a hobby at this point. But appreciate everybody's support and look forward to seeing you soon in the next one.